Alright Oddsocks crew, dust off those spellbooks because today we're diving headfirst into one of the most gloriously chaotic arcade sequels ever to grace the Evercade. We're talking Wizard Fire. Now, if you remember Gate of Doom, you know that wild isometric dungeon crawler that threw skeletons, treasure, and absolute madness at you with no warning? Then you'll feel right at home here because Wizard Fire is the direct sequel, and trust me, it's like Gate of Doom looked in the mirror and said, I need to be bigger, louder, and at least 20% more ridiculous. And ridiculous it is. This is the kind of game where every hallway is full of enemies who clearly didn't get the memo about personal space. Every boss fight feels like you've just picked a fight with the wrong fantasy novel cover art. And every spell feels like Gandalf with no fellowship to back him up, just pure chaotic wizard rage directed straight at the screen. The beauty of Wizard Fire is that it doesn't mess around with subtlety. You're not sneaking through dungeons or quietly plotting strategy. No, you're smashing doors down, blasting waves of enemies, and hoping your thumbs don't cramp up before the next ambush. It's a game that doesn't ask politely for your attention. It grabs you by the Oddsocks and drags you straight into the chaos. And here's the kicker. Back in the arcade days, Wizard Fire was the kind of game that gleefully chewed through your pocket money. Skeleton army, that'll cost you. Giant fiery boss, better cough up another coin. But on the Evercade, you can just rage, restart, and blast through it as many times as you like without selling your bicycle to pay the arcade machine. So buckle up because in this Oddsocks adventure, we're going to find out, does Wizard Fire outdo its predecessor, or is it all spectacle and no substance? And most importantly, will I survive long enough without turning my controller into a medieval weapon? Grab your wands, grab your swords, and let's march bravely and probably recklessly into the pixelated pandemonium of Wizard Fire. Welcome to the episode. This one's going to be magical and slightly unhinged. As always, we'll be looking at the story, the sound, and the gameplay, and a little later on, I'll be letting you guys know my stats on how long it took me to complete Wizard Fire. But before we jump into that, let me tell you some facts about this Evercade cartridge. The Data East Collection 1 cartridge for the Evercade is one of the early purple arcade-themed carts, instantly standing out from the red console line. Released as cartridge number 2 on June the 18th, 2020, it brought a legendary lineup of Data East classics into the Evercade family. This cart is a celebration of arcade variety at its finest. Every game on this cart delivers a different style of challenge, showcasing some of Data East's creative range and knack for the arcade fun. This purple cart being one of Evercade's early releases, it feels like a foundation stone of the library. Whether you're revisiting old favorites or discovering these gems for the first time, this cartridge captures the chaotic, unpredictable, and endless entertaining spirit of Data East. Now, I paid $37.61 for this cart, but we can't say that because this has 10 games on it. And for the purpose of this review, we're only reviewing Wizard Fire, meaning that I spent $3.75. Now, for me to get my $10 per hour ratio, I'll need to play and complete Wizard Fire in more than 23 minutes. And I can successfully say I achieved this playing and completing Wizard Fire in 39 minutes, meaning my dollar per hour ratio is $5.89 per hour, which is still great in my books. I had a play count of 1, I did not use any load counts, and a save count of 2. Let's take a look at the story. In Wizard Fire, the kingdom isn't overrun by monsters for no reason, no sirree Bob. There's a method to the magical madness, and the evil sorcerer Zenon, he's back, and he's cooked up a plan that's straight out of a villain handbook. After being defeated in Gate of Doom, he's plotting to raise an army of the undead and take back the lands in which he was defeated from. Basically, Zenon is holding the kingdom ransom with chaos, and your heroes are the only ones standing in his way. Again. That's right, very similar to the first game. You get to pick from a squad of valiant heroes from the wizard, the knight, the elf, the dwarf, and more, each with unique abilities and quirky personalities. Your mission? Stop Zenon, save the innocent, and prevent the kingdom from turning into a permanent monster-themed amusement park. Along the way, you'll face skeleton warriors, giant bats, exploding slimes, fire-breathing demons, and all the twisted creations Zenon could ever dream up. And yes, they're exactly where Zenon wants them, standing in your path and generally being a royal nuisance. Each level feels like a chapter in a chaotic fantasy epic. You start by clearing the castle outskirts, fighting off Zenon's minions, then press on through cursed forests, trap-filled dungeons, and molten lava caverns. Zenon's laughter echoes through the halls, he's a bit of a drama king, and scattered magical artifacts, coins, and power-ups keep you feeling like Gandalf tearing through a personal fantasy warzone. The climax hits at the Sorcerer's Tower where Zenon unleashes every monstrous invention he can muster. Giant fire elements, undead knights, and bizarre magical contraptions that should probably never exist. Dodge, slash, blast, and finally confront Zenon himself. Defeat him and save the kingdom and watch the chaos subside. The beauty of Wizard's Fire's story is that it gives real purpose to all the frantic action. The monsters aren't just popping up randomly, they're part of a larger chaotic plan by a delightfully evil mastermind. And while the gameplay keeps you running, casting, and slashing like a hero in a whirlwind, knowing there's a real reason behind all that mayhem makes each victory feel earned. You're not just mashing buttons, you're taking down a notorious sorcerer, defending a kingdom, and surviving a world where everything that can kill you will absolutely try to. For the odd sock score on the story, I give Wizard Fire a 6 out of 10. Look, it's so similar to the first game that it does feel more like an excuse to throw you into endless hordes of monsters rather than tell a fully fleshed out tale. However, there is still a story that's in the game. Zenon is back, scheming from his tower, summoning skeletons, bats, and blobs as if he just discovered evil is trending again. Meanwhile, with the characters of the heroes, they are so light on detail that you really need to lean into an old-school D&D knowledge book to make sense of their abilities and roles. The humour comes when you realise that despite all the epic stakes, your tiny team is meant to stand against millions of minions. It's like showing up to a zombie apocalypse wearing medieval cosplay and somehow still managing to survive. Every monster feels strategically placed for maximum annoyance, proving that Zenon's evil plan is both overdramatic and slightly ridiculous. Picture him in his tower dramatically gesturing like, "Yes, stand right there, it is perfect for my villainous selfie." So while the story has this classic evil rises, hero save the day framework, it's really light on actual narrative depth. You're mostly here for the chaos, the spells, the Morningstar swings, and the monster-smashing mayhem. It's entertaining in its own frantic arcade-style way, but if you are hoping for rich character backstory or a compelling plot, you might be left wanting a little bit more. Let's take a look at the sound. The music of Wizard Fire, known as Dark Seal 2 in Japan, isn't just background noise, it's pure high-intensity fantasy fuel for your ears. Composed by the legendary Gamadelic team at Data East and led by Tatsui Kuchi, with contributions from Tomoyoshi Sato and Mahoko Ando, this soundtrack does exactly what a dungeon-crawling arcade game should. It pumps you up, telegraphs danger, and occasionally makes you feel like the star of your own over-the-top heroic anime. Released in 1992, Wizard Fire's music was such a hit, it even got its own album for the following year called Dark Seal 2 Data East Gamadelic. Fans could relive the dungeon-bashing, monster-slashing madness in high-fidelity audio, and let's be honest, it's really easy to imagine yourself dramatically shouting, "Take that, you slime army," while wielding an imaginary sword, and bonus point if your cat was your sidekick while listening to the soundtrack. The soundtrack matches the chaos of the game perfectly, from the triumphant Knights of Light theme that makes you feel like a heroic wizard or knight on a mission, to the ominous Army of Darkness cues that scream, "Yeah, that fire-breathing demon is coming for you." Each track sets the tone for the dungeon madness. Nothing makes dodging traps, fireballs, and lava pits more satisfying than music that's basically yelling, "You're doomed, but you look heroic doing it." Even decades later, the music still stands out. It's quirky, it's epic, and just a touch over the top, exactly what you want while tossing fireballs, slashing monsters, and ignoring any semblance of a coherent story. Seriously, if the soundtrack doesn't make you want to march through hordes of skeletons while screaming a dramatic battle cry, are you even playing Wizard Fire right? So the next time you grab this Evercade cart, remember you're not just playing a game, you're living inside a data-eased musical adventure. Grab your wizard hat, your chainmail, or your road cloak, press start, and just let that tune carry you through epic, chaotic fun. For the Oddsock sound score, I would give Wizard Fire a solid 8 out of 10, and honestly, that's saying something because it's pretty rare to find a game where the soundtrack steals the show. This is one of those cases. The tunes are high energy, epic, and perfectly chaotic, enveloping you in the fantasy world so fully that you almost forget that the story is, well, let's just say it, a little light on details. But who needs a deep plot when you've got music making you feel like you're leading a one-man army through a dungeon full of skeletons, bats, and blobs? Every level is practical in its own musical adventure. The heroic fanfares make you feel like a proper champion, and the ominous creeping tunes cue you into "oh no, things are about to go horribly wrong" moments. I swear, there were times I found myself dodging fireballs and spikes with the music perfectly hyping me up, and I completely forgot to check if my character even had a backstory. It was a classic. I got so caught up in the soundtrack that I ignored reality for that moment. The composers absolutely nailed it. From the triumphant battle themes to the eerie dungeon melodies, each track feels alive, punchy, and dramatic in all the right ways. Honestly, some tracks made me half expect a marching band to appear right behind me, cheering me on while I clumsily attacked skeletons. If even there was proof that music can make up for a light plot, this game was it. I almost caught myself tapping imaginary drumsticks on my desk during the fight scenes, and at one point I may have yelled, "Encore!" at a fire-breathing demon. It's chaotic, it's epic, and it makes every spell, slash, and dodge feels like part of a cinematic fantasy blockbuster. Just one where you're the star, the orchestra, and the stunt double all at once. Wizard Fire's music doesn't just set the mood, it becomes the mood. And it's so good at it, it nearly makes you forget you're playing a game where the story is basically go smash monsters and hope for the best. Let's take a look at the gameplay. The gameplay of Wizard Fire feels instantly familiar if you've ever played Gate of Doom, and that's because it basically is Gate of Doom. It's still an isometric dungeon crawler where you pick a hero, cast big flashy spells, and wade through hordes of monsters. The core mechanics haven't changed much. Move, attack, dodge, and grab whatever magical loot you can find along the way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That said, while the gameplay works, it doesn't reinvent the wheel. The dungeons, traps, and enemies are all styled in the same vein as the first game, meaning veterans will feel right at home here, and probably a little bit déjà vu. The game's pace is high, spells feel powerful, and the combat still delivers those satisfying take-that moments against skeletons, bats, and other arcade-style nasties. Where this game differs from the original is in its focus and length. Wizard Fire feels shorter overall and places a bigger emphasis on the boss fights, making each confrontation feel like a mini final battle rather than a checkpoint along a long dungeon crawl. The journey to get there, the exploration, and the random encounters, the looting is less prominent, which is a bit of a shame if you loved the slow build of Gate of Doom. Here the game is more like a boss fight express, but at least the fights are well designed, challenging, and packed with the chaos you'd expect from a Data East arcade action title. So while Wizard Fire doesn't drastically change the formula, it is still satisfying. You get big spells, fast combat, and tense boss encounters, all wrapped up in a game that rewards skill, timing, and a little bit of memorization. It might not have that epic journey of the first game, but it's still an action-packed ride that's fun, frantic, and perfect for quick dungeon crawling chaos. So for the odd-sock score on the gameplay, I give this one a 5 out of 10. Now don't get me wrong, it works, and the core mechanics are solid, but compared to the first game, Gate of Doom, I miss the sense of journeying throughout the dungeons. In that one, every step towards the boss felt like an adventure with traps, random encounters, and loot to keep you on your toes. Wizard Fire, on the other hand, leans heavily into the boss battles, and that's not inherently bad, but for me, the fights ended up feeling a little bit repetitive. Mostly a button-mashing marathon with less emphasis on movement and strategy, and it's like the game handed me a megaphone that said spam those buttons and hope for the best.
Oh, beautiful.
Rather than challenging me to dance around attacks or really use my hero's ability to their full potential. So yeah, the gameplay does work, it's still fun in bursts, but it's a step down in variety and pacing compared to the original. It's more boss-focused chaos than epic dungeon adventure, and while that's fine for quick sessions, it doesn't quite capture the thrill of exploring every dark corner before finally facing the big bad. Overall, I'd give Wizard Fire a 6 out of 10, and honestly, that feels about right, because this is the same score that I gave Gate of Doom, a 6 out of 10. This is basically a spiritual sequel, so it makes sense that the scores line up like the two heroic siblings in a fantasy saga. It's very much of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of game, sticking close to the first title's formula. You've got the same isometric dungeon crawling, you've got your blasting spells and the hordes of monsters, basically everything that made Gate of Doom fun, just a little bit more polished and cranked up a notch. The hero characters are cool with different abilities and playstyles, but I found myself sticking mostly to the distant shooting characters. They just made the boss battles easier to manage compared to the up-close and personal types, like the mace-wielding characters who felt a little bit riskier in the thick of things. Honestly, choosing between them is just like picking between coffee or energy drinks. You'll survive either way, but just one makes the chaos feel slightly more manageable. That said, the real highlight of Wizard Fire is in the sound design. The soundtrack is high intensity and completely envelopes you into the fantasy world, making you almost forget that the story is so light on. It's no surprise that the music was released as its own album, and each track makes you feel like you're storming through the dungeons in an epic action anime. From dramatic magical spells to tense boss encounters, the tunes elevate the chaos into pure fantasy joy. All in all, Wizard Fire delivers solid arcade-style dungeon action. It may not reinvent the wheel, but it's polished enough, it's fun enough, and it's loaded enough with music that makes every spell cast feel like a heroic triumph. And hey, if you love Gate of Doom, then this is basically more of the same, but with a little extra sparkle and a few more explosions, because why not? I would suggest that as soon as you finish Gate of Doom, throw in Wizard Fire and play that as one big game. Thank you so much for watching another deep dive Evercade completion review. Please remember to give me a like, subscribe, and comment down below. And remember, my goal is to get 200 subs by the end of December. So if you haven't already, give us a sub if you like this kind of content. With all the Evercade news lately and new games coming out, I cannot wait to show you more and more reviews as we go along. And I hope you stay odd, you stay awesome, and we'll see you next time on another Odd Socks adventure. See you later, guys.